Hi, my name's Maricel. I'm 33. And on my grandfather's birthday, I learned just how replaceable we really were. He had spent $59,000 on one last family trip to Europe. Flights, hotels, tours. His dream gift before he grew too old to travel. At Chicago O'Hare, bags packed, passports ready, my mother looked him dead in the eye and said the words I'll never forget. "We forgot your ticket. Go home." For a second, I thought I'd misheard. But then Callista crossed her arms. Bryn scrolled her phone. No one spoke. No one defended him. "Take mine," I said, stepping forward. He paid for this trip. He should go. The sound of the slap cracked through the terminal like a whip. My own mother's hand across my face. A stranger gasped. Grandpa flinched. Not from the slap, but from shame. "You always make everything harder," she hissed. "Stop trying to be the hero." And then they turned their backs. Their voices blending with the airport hum. Their laughter growing distant as they walked through security. Leaving us, me and Grandpa, standing there like luggage someone forgot to claim. I stared at my crumpled boarding pass, my cheek burning, as the plane carrying my family disappeared into the clouds. I thought being left behind would be the worst part, but I was wrong. Because when they came back, what happened next made the slap feel like nothing at all. That day at the airport wasn't the first time I'd been treated like baggage. It was just the loudest. Growing up as the youngest meant being the extra, the afterthought. The one whose name never quite made it onto the cake. I still remember my 13th birthday. The balloons said Happy 16th, Bryn. The leftover frosting scraped into a corner just for me. No pictures, no candles. Just my mother saying, "You should be grateful we even remembered." Grateful. That word haunted me. When Callista needed braces, I got her hand-me-down sneakers. When Bryn wanted a car, I worked 2 part-time jobs to help with insurance. And when my tuition bill came due, I took out loans in my own name while my sisters vacationed on Grandpa's dime. Still, I told myself it was family. That maybe if I worked harder, stayed quieter, they'd finally see me. But every report card pinned to the fridge belonged to them. Every trophy displayed in the living room had their names etched in gold. And when I brought home awards of my own, my mother barely looked up. "Don't brag," she'd mutter. "People don't like show-offs." So I stopped showing. Stopped telling. Stopped expecting. By the time I was 33, I'd mastered the art of being invisible. It was easier that way. To shrink, to blend, to accept scraps of love and call it family. But here's the thing about silence. It doesn't erase the pain. It just buries it until the day it claws its way back to the surface. And that day was already on its way. Because what I discovered after that trip home from the airport proved my family hadn't just forgotten me. They had planned something much darker. After the airport, Grandpa and I went back to his small brick house. He sat in his recliner. The TV was on, but silent, like he was waiting for it to explain what had just happened. For days, he barely spoke. And when he did, it was always the same line. Maybe they just made a mistake. But mistakes don't cost $59,000. And mistakes don't slap their own daughter in public. At night, I heard him shuffling papers in the study. Folders stuffed with receipts, bank slips, coupons. He was a man who could account for every cent. But this time, he had no answers. One evening, I caught him holding his travel wallet. Inside was the passport he'd renewed just for this trip. He ran his thumb over the cover like it was already a relic, then slid it back into the drawer without a word. Then came the first crack. A cousin texted me late one night. "Why didn't you come to Paris? Didn't you get the ticket change?" Ticket change? I hadn't heard a word about it. She sent me a screenshot, an email my mother had forwarded to the family group. Except I wasn't on it. The message said, "Remove Dad's booking. Shift the balance to Callista's companion seat. Tell him it was an error at the counter. Not a mistake. A plan." I confronted my sister Karen. She looked away and said, "You wouldn't understand. Mom just wants stability. Grandpa's too old to be dragged around Europe. It was better this way. Better this way." The phrase stuck like a thorn. Meanwhile, Grandpa kept shrinking. He stopped shaving. Stopped going to chess night. Most evenings, he just stared at an old photo of himself in uniform. Like he couldn't reconcile that man with the one left behind at an airport. And me? I stayed quiet. Went to work. Made tea for a man who used to be the pillar of our family. But inside, something sharp was forming. The silence I'd lived in for 33 years was finally cracking. Because if they could betray him like this, what chance did I ever have of being seen? I thought that was the worst of it. But then the phone rang from Europe, and everything changed. The call came on a gray Tuesday morning. I was packing Tyler's lunch when my phone buzzed with a Paris number. On the other end was my cousin. Her voice was hushed, like she was afraid someone might overhear. "Rebecca, you need to know what's happening here." My stomach tightened. She told me they'd rented a villa outside the city, wine flowing, laughter spilling across marble floors. Everyone was there. Except me. Except Grandpa. But that wasn't the worst part. She lowered her voice. Your mother gave a toast last night. She said, "Finally, we can travel without all that baggage." Baggage. That was her word for her own father. And for me. I gripped the counter so hard my knuckles went white. Are you sure? I whispered. She laughed when she said it, my cousin replied. And everyone clapped. I hung up and stood frozen in the kitchen. The sound of the refrigerator humming. The faint rustle of Tyler's cereal box. Ordinary life. Colliding with betrayal so sharp it left me breathless. That night, I tried to tell Grandpa. He was sitting in his chair, slippers half off, staring at nothing. Grandpa, they're in Paris. They made a toast. He didn't even look at me. Just said, I told myself I'd never be ashamed of my own children. Then he closed his eyes. It was the first time I saw him look old. Not tired. Not disappointed. Old. Days later, another envelope arrived. Thick, cream-colored, sealed with gold. An invitation. The Whitfield Foundation Gala. Paris. My sister Callista was listed as co-chair. My mother as honorary guest of legacy. It was clear now, this wasn't just a trip. It was a rebranding. A rewriting of family history. And we weren't in it. I wanted to scream. To call them. To demand answers. But all I could do was sit there and watch Grandpa's hands tremble as he held the invitation. His name wasn't mentioned anywhere. Neither was mine. I'd thought they were cruel. I hadn't realized they were erasing us. And just when I thought I couldn't fall any lower, a single document landed in my mailbox. One that revealed the betrayal went deeper than I ever imagined. The envelope wasn't just an invitation. It was a copy of my grandfather's trust amendment, dated 6 months earlier. It replaced me as heir. It cut Grandpa's control. And it transferred power of attorney to my mother. My breath caught. This wasn't carelessness. It was theft. I replayed everything. Grandpa's missing checks. The canceled ticket. The whispers about baggage. And now the paper trail. I gathered everything. The cousin's text. The email with my name deleted. The trust amendment stamped by a notary I knew. Piece by piece, their scheme unraveled. That's when I decided. No more silence. They wanted courtrooms? Fine. But this time, I'd be the one holding the record straight. I filed a petition. Fraudulent amendment. Coercion of an elder. Financial exploitation. On hearing day, I walked in with Grandpa. His cane trembled, but his eyes had fire again. He squeezed my hand before we entered. A silent promise we wouldn't back down. My mother and sister sat across. Callista's nails gleamed, her lips pursed. My mother wore pearls, confident as ever. They whispered to their lawyer like the outcome was already theirs. But as I laid out the timeline, the canceled ticket, the hidden email, the amendment, their faces shifted. Callista flushed crimson. My mother's jaw tightened. They hadn't expected evidence. They'd counted on my silence. I presented the affidavit, then the screenshots, then the notary's deposition admitting pressure. By the final exhibit, the room was silent. The judge leaned forward. This isn't miscommunication, he said. This looks deliberate, calculated. My mother snapped. You think you're better than us because you play lawyer. But family takes what it needs to survive. I met her eyes. No, Mom, family protects each other. What you did was theft. For once, she had no response. But the gavel hadn't even struck before I realized. Winning in court was only half the battle. The gavel finally struck. The judge's words echoed in the silent courtroom. Petition granted. Trust restored. Power of attorney returned to the grantor. Grandpa's hand shook as he signed the order, but his smile was steady. For the first time in years, I saw relief spread across his face. Not because of the money, not the estate, but because someone had fought for him, not against him. My mother wouldn't look at me. Her pearls seemed to choke her now, her posture stiff and brittle. Callista gathered her bag in silence. Mascara smudged, lips pressed tight. They walked out without a word. And just like that, the family who once silenced me had no voice left at all. Later, on the courthouse steps, Grandpa leaned on his cane and whispered, "You gave me back my dignity." I swallowed hard, realizing that was what they had really tried to steal. Back home, I packed away the envelope that had started it all, not as evidence anymore, but as a reminder. A reminder that silence protects no one, that family titles don't excuse betrayal, and that sometimes the only way to honor where you come from is to refuse to let it destroy you. 6 months later, I drove Grandpa to the lake house that had almost been taken. The keys jingled in his hand as he unlocked the door. Sunlight poured in, scattering dust like tiny stars. "This," he said softly, "is how family is supposed to feel." I realized then, justice isn't only about verdicts and statutes. It's about drawing a line and saying, you don't get to write my story for me. If you've ever had someone in your own family betray you for greed or power, you're not alone. Tell me in the comments how you found the strength to fight back. Because sometimes, the most powerful justice you can claim is finally letting yourself be seen.